All right. Really excited to talk with you, Dave. We're going to be looking at building the future of the web. Obviously, you have quite the seat here in terms of your work with Webflow, your work with previous groups. How are you?
I'm great. How are you, Mason? It's good to
Yeah,
see you
good.
again. Thanks for
Good to
having me
see
on.
you. Yeah. Yeah, thanks for coming on. And I know that there's, so much that's changing right now. And I want to get into it. And I know you're probably super busy as well with the ramp up getting to WebflowConf.
Indeed.
So we'll talk a bit about that. But I'd love to just kind of, back up a little bit and hear more around like how how did you arrive at Webflow and like what's sort of your background?
Well, my background is I've been a marketer for about 20 years, a little bit more than 20 years, and spent a good chunk of the first part of it in B2C, working for social media platforms and marketplaces. And then right around halfway through my career, I had this inflection point where I was in B2C, but I was looking at B2B. And
Yeah.
I thought, most of the B2B marketing that I see is quite boring. And if I could take the consumer chops that I learned and apply it to B2B, I think it'd be really neat. The
Mm.
other thing that was going on at that time, this is about eight years ago or so, was you sort of saw the rise of the developer as a
Mm.
really important audience. And the way to kind of market to a developer is a lot of the same ways that you market to a consumer. And so it's
Mm.
like it was a combination of those two. And so I made the jump and I went to a place called Cloudflare,
Mm.
which I'm sure your audience knows about. I
Yeah.
went as deep in internet, like infrastructure technology as I possibly could. Spent a bunch of time there. I spent a bunch of time at GitLab, which I'm
Mm.
sure your audience knows all about as well.
Yep.
And then made my way over to Webflow as CMO about a year and change ago.
Yeah. I think first off, I'm really thrilled that you've joined Webflow because it's so needed, and it's been great to be able to get to know you over the past year. It's also been probably one of the wildest years in that I've ever worked with Webflow. Um, what do you see as like, as you've worked with all these different companies, what, what did you kind of learn at Cloudflare and GitLab that's kind of, bringing you some like a different perspective into Webflow?
Yeah, there are two, maybe three common threads that I've had throughout my career that apply to what Webflow is experiencing right now. And quite frankly, also the sort of community around us is experiencing right now as well. The first is all about trust.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't overstate how important the idea of trust is. I started my career way early part of my career in this idea of how do you build trust online? How do you build trust on the web? This is like the late 90s, not to age myself, but the idea of handing over your credit card to a complete, stranger or nameless, faceless website back then was very scary proposition for people. And right at the beginning part of my career, I started learning the importance of building trust in a very authentic way, both on the brand side and sort of like community side. I think that is extremely important both for Webflow and our community as the web is going through really fundamental changes. I think the second thread is I've always been attracted to companies who are going through what I call category shifts.
Mm.
Shifts in what's happening in the market and shifts in their business in response and leading that sort of category shift. So for GitLab, as an example, it was really the rise of DevOps as a category
Mm.
and DevOps becoming DevSecOps, bringing all of this technical talent who used to operate in silos all onto the same platform where they could collaborate and they had the guardrails in place. But that category shift required a lot of storytelling. Um, we are going through a very similar category shift over here at Webflow and our community and the
Yep.
agencies that we
Yep.
work with, yourself included. And I've always been drawn, maybe insanely so, because it's very tough work, but I've always been drawn to this like evolution of a company and a category's growth.
Mm. What do you see as like, what is the category shift from where you're sitting? Like
I'm
where are
see-
where
yeah.
are we moving and where are we going?
Well, I'm seeing a couple of dynamics happening at the same time. all of which is being accelerated and turned around by AI. And it can make actually people feel like they're in an oop-de-loop, like in an airplane that's going around and around and around.
Yeah.
And it can be quite unsettling. But if you like it, it can be like exhilarating really at the same time. The first is like traditional categories, like the CMS category, are undergoing an enormous amount of change in what buyers and practitioners expect from those platforms. And so what they don't want is, an old platform where you take AI and sprinkle pixie dust all over it and hope that you can say you're AI native. That's not what the buyer wants. And so that's the first dynamic that I'm seeing. The second dynamic I'm seeing is like whole new categories are coming up. Ones that 2 years ago I don't think we would have dreamed of. So, the easiest one to point to on this one is like the nature of discovery in an AI era has created a new category called AI search.
Yep.
It's very related to SEO, but it's also very different. And you
Yeah.
have new players who are really innovating in that field. And so literally category by category, you can see either evolutions of existing ones or the birth, almost like a supernova, when two categories come and smack into each other and they create a new star. You can kind of see the sort of creation of new categories. And what that means for a company like Webflow that's been around for a dozen years is it's an enormous opportunity to build with a community of people who care a lot about where the future is going and make sure that we're shaping it really in the right way.
Yeah. And I think the thing that I've been really fascinated with is thinking of a category is really, for a while, it was just sort of like web building. And it was sort of
Yeah.
like you would build the site and then, launch it. And then that was it. And it was kind of like this piece of brochureware. And I remember Nathan Hewing, I was talking with him a few weeks ago, obviously brilliant solutions engineer over at Webflow. And he was saying that the role of the web used to be just like, oh, let's have a way to capture either credit cards or email addresses, right? So that was the sort of full role of the web.
Yeah.
And now it's moving to something different. And there was like a brand layer that might be in there
Yeah.
to establish that trust. And then now it seems like that brand management within models is almost now the first role of the web, and the secondary role is some type of transaction. Is that something that you're seeing? I mean, you're like
Yeah.
working around like how to market these tools, and then at the same time working as a marketer, we're just like, I got to deliver, right? So I know you said like you're the first customer of Webflow, and you
Yeah.
and your team are the first customer of Webflow.
Yeah.
What does that like? What does that mean for you?
Well, it's an enormous gift
Yeah.
to be a marketer that is treated like customer zero by our product teams and engineering teams, where they turn to us and they ask us, "Hey, Dave and team, what are your pain points and how can we solve them?" Really means that the company is able to have the fastest feedback loop that I've ever seen in any company that I've worked in the past 20 years, which is an extraordinary gift and opportunity. And it's also a huge responsibility for the team to make sure that we're kind of synthesizing not only our pain points, but the pain points of the other marketing leaders that we talk to, the agencies that we talk to, the people who are on, sort of the marketing team. I happen to think that like marketing is not a noun, it's a verb. I
Mm,
say this to my team all the time, which is it's not just the people on the marketing team in
mm,
an org chart. It's anyone who's in a company or their agency who's helping take a product to market. And so it's a huge gift to be in that way. And and a part of that is uh, consistency to say that the the job of the marketer hasn't changed.
mm.
The world around the marketer has. So the job of the marketer 20 years ago is the same job that we have today. It's the same job that we have in the next
Yep.
20 years.
Yep.
And that is build a brand that people trust and drive growth.
Yeah.
Those two things. That hasn't changed. It won't change. But the ways in which we do it, the dynamics that we're dealing with in market, that has fundamentally changed. And it is an exhilarating opportunity for the team really to go through.
I'm curious, like what, as customer zero, what's something that you were like frustrated with Webflow and that you were like, I need this in the product, and what did you get?
It's amazing. You could still work for a company like Webflow that helps other companies build amazing digital experiences and still have a question about who owns the website.
Yeah.
so so sometimes my frustration is like is much more an organizational model and like role responsibilities and interdependencies between teams than it is about the product itself. And I think that there's a lot of insight there, which is to say that a lot of time, a lot of the narrative that happens in market right now is a technology narrative, and that's
Yeah.
great. But transformation isn't just about technology; it's about people and process at the same time. And so, to be a marketing leader in 2026 and beyond, you got to be great at a bunch of things,
Mm.
and almost be like a polymath at them. You have to be
Mm.
like great at brand and product marketing and storytelling. You have to be great at, sort of driving pipeline and accelerating pipeline and enabling your sales team to succeed. But the third part is you have to really be great at transformation
Mm.
and really creating an AI forward, basically marketing team. You have to be great at all three of those things. And the truth of the matter, Mason, is I don't think I've met a CMO who's great at all three.
Okay.
2 out of 3 ain't bad. And
Yeah.
so what happens in that dynamic is the fourth foundational skill becomes even more important to the marketing leader.
Mm.
And that is leadership, the ability
Mm.
to build great teams, high
Mm.
performing teams, and spiking in areas that that person isn't spiking.
It's interesting you mentioned the sort of like transformational side of that, because I was talking with Nick from Profound last week on the stream, and
Yeah.
he was, when they had hosted Zero Click over the summer, what was interesting, which by the way, thank you for co-sponsoring with me. It
Yeah.
was great to be able to be a part of that.
Yeah.
Was the launch of the marketing engineer,
Yeah.
and like really looking at how, and we were debated, is this like one role or is this like everyone's role?
Yeah.
And it's probably like we say in consulting, it depends, right? So we never have one answer. We always just say that it's a series of answers. But yeah, I think the big part of this is just trying to make sure that it's just the basics, as you were talking about, like the right people are doing the right thing at the right time. Um, and as you're getting into the basics here of like building trust and driving pipeline and like brand preference and things like that, what are you seeing as over the past year, like what are some things that have really worked? Because it's really easy to think that, or I think a lot of times if I was to look at the category, sometimes this stuff can get sold as like almost a GLP-1. It's just like a magic pill that you take and then everything. But it's really more of like a gym membership. That's the way that I've thought about it.
It's a great
So
metaphor.
yeah,
That's
oh
a great
yeah,
metaphor.
I'm full of metaphors.
Yeah.
But it really like it encapsulates, I think, some of the promises that are made out there, but it's all black boxes. Um, what are the things that you've seen that have really like created a spike either for Webflow or with other CMOs that you're working with?
Yeah, it's such a good question. I've seen a few things that are working,
Mm.
and they end up creating like a virtuous cycle when they
Mm.
actually work. And the first is just thinking about the marketing org overall. Over the past couple of decades, it's become an extraordinarily siloed function, and for good reason. One of the reasons why it has become siloed is just like it's a very complex, complicated function,
Mhm.
and you need deep expertise in each of the functions: demand
Yeah.
generation, product marketing, brand marketing, marketing analytics, and operations, and on and on and on. The problem is once you create the silos, essentially what happens is there's like a relay race
Yeah.
of action that happens from idea to getting something in actual market and actually shipping it. I think one of the things that I've seen work is when the relay race breaks down because of AI, and answer
Mm.
engine optimization is probably at the center of the bullseye in terms of like creating that breakdown, because to win an answer engine optimization, to win an AI search, it's a team sport. You can't operate in a silo.
Yeah.
You could get by in search engine optimization, being an individual contributor or just one function going deep
Yeah.
and updating, the things on the site itself. But because in order to rank with the prompts that matter to you and matter to the people that you're trying to reach, requires not only what you're doing off of the website. So social media marketing is a really good example, and brand
Yep.
building to build trust and authority. It also requires a ton of work on site as well, and creating a closed loop really between the two. And so what I'll say is, as a marketing leader, I love it, because in the before times, I would basically just be saying, "Hey team, can't you do integrated marketing? Can't people just get along and share
Yeah.
your OKRs and share your goals?" And now there's actually no option but to do that. It is
Yep.
actually the part of the strategy. So
Mm.
what I see in as working is teams who are organizing themselves in that way. I'll point out one other thing in terms of what I see working, and it
Mm.
gets to the question that you had just asked, and that is um, the the hard part in web marketing today is not the same hard part that was around 3 years ago.
Mm.
3 years ago, if you asked me the hard part, it'd be like building a website and publishing it. That's not the hard part anymore, and it's commoditized. That's the easy thing to do. The hard part is what I call on day 2 and beyond.
Mm.
How you actually treat your digital experience as a
Yeah.
brand builder and growth engine over the long haul.
Mhm.
And that's what I'm super excited about what we're building here. That's what I'm super excited about. What we'll talk about at Conf, and I can't wait to like unveil the actual direction that we're taking. Um, but it's really living that promise of from day 2 and beyond. That's the marketer's job now, and they need to make sure that they've got all the skills and assets and teams and tools to actually execute that job.
And the thing that I think is interesting is even Webflow's own positioning, which, for the past few years has been WXP, or Web Experience Platform, right? And then I'd love to be able to hear from you, like, what does agentic marketing platform mean?
It really
And
rolls off the tongue, doesn't
it
it,
really
Mason?
does. I was like, I wasn't intentionally trying to trip over that. But obviously it's a complicated space and the name reflects that. So what does this mean for like the future of Webflow? And obviously there's going to be more that is, talked about at Conf and stuff like that. So for people that are tuning in ahead of time, they'll get maybe a bit of a preview.
Yeah, look, our position as what we call an agentic web marketing platform is a recognition of where the world is, but basically where it's going.
Mhm.
Number one, and number two, like any good sort of positioning strategy, which is corporate strategy, if you think about it, it might be shepherded sort of by the CMO or the marketing team, but it is really corporate strategy.
Yeah.
It is it's a real understanding of the fact that there are marketers today who face much different challenges and opportunities about how they actually market on the web. And be it some of the things that we talked about in terms of the changing state of AI search and discovery and how that has changed, the
Yeah.
changing nature of work itself and how AI teams are transforming themselves, and the fact that the way that they do the work via MCP or in their like LLM tool of choice, that's changed as well. All while the dynamic is from the CFO and the board, do more with less, you're resource constrained and all of that. So a ton of transformation. And what ends up happening is marketing teams say, I don't need a website builder. What I need is
Mhm.
a web marketing platform that understands me and my business and where it's going.
Mhm.
And so that's what we're super excited about is clearly the website is a part of that,
Yeah.
but it is not the only part of that. And we'll be talking a lot about that at WebflowConf. About 2 weeks ago, Ben Hafley and Ben is our chief product officer, went out with a blog post. It was actually the second in a series of blog posts to the community that we had been working on for quite a while, talking about sort of the problem space that we are going to invest a ton in,
Mhm.
that is related to the agentic web marketing platform, but goes even deeper.
Mhm.
And in those blog posts, we talk about sort of the principles that we're using to build the next evolution of our platform. And principles like, anyone with an idea should be able to build it. This idea that you don't actually need to be an engineer to be able to use code.
Yeah.
Um, this idea of your presence should always be able to adapt as the web evolves. We have this vision that the web is actually a living web. It is the manifestation of this idea that marketers have had for a while, where it's like right message, right user, right channel at right time,
Yeah.
and to have one brand but infinitely expressed. And so we cast out this vision with our principles. And I got to say, the team is like, they are working nonstop to bring it to life so that we can unveil it at WebflowConf.
Well, I can't wait for the big unveil. And it was amazing, that article that came out. Because like right before that, Timothy Ricks had just posted something about him being like frustrated with Webflow and, that type of thing. And then all of a sudden it was like record scratch, and he was like, oh wait, this is awesome. And his like the very next day he posted a whole other video about like how excited he was.
Yeah.
And I was curious, like it sounds like this was in the works for a while. This wasn't just like Timothy Ricks posted something and all of a sudden like you got on a typewriter and organized all the stuff with Ben and everyone.
Yeah, look, I mean, first of all, I'm extraordinarily grateful to Timothy. He's such an important part of the community. He and he puts voice to a lot of what people are thinking.
Mm.
And I think that right now in the community broadly, there's a lot of uncertainty about the world in which they're in, the direction that we're taking with our platform, how Webflow and the community and the agency ecosystem, how we work, as almost in an ecosystem like together. Agencies and partners in the community. I like to think about this brand as being built on top of community. It's not this PS thing that we do on the side.
Yeah.
And so I'm enormously grateful to him for putting voice to what people were thinking. But yeah, we had been working on it for quite some time. The breadcrumbs were already being planted with like MCP 2.0,
Yeah.
and AI, the AI code components.
Yep.
And so, if anything, it was, I'll just say, sheer serendipity that he had put out video number one, and then we were just completely stoked to see that he read it so quickly, and then broke it out for his audience right after we actually put it out.
Yeah, I was like, I couldn't have like tried to coordinate like a better sort of like PR story arc.
Yeah.
Where it's like problem solution or whatever. And so it was cool to see. And I know if I wouldn't be sort of doing service to the community if I didn't ask you about that, because I know there was like Slack messages like, did Webflow just, was there sort of like a back and forth or some sort of thing? But yeah, it just sounds like serendipity, as you said.
It's like one of my mentors once taught me, like, I'm not that smart and I'm not that stupid. It's like I'm not that smart to be able to think five chess moves ahead. I think sheer serendipity, but also I think it's a signal that we are much closer than a lot of people will think to what the community is thinking.
Right.
And it's a good lesson for us to make sure that we're communicating loudly and often, especially to the people who extend an enormous amount of trust in the platform. They make their livelihoods on the platform, and we need to make sure that we continue to not only invest in them, which we do. And again, can't wait to talk about some of the things that we're doing at Conf, but also that we're being good partners and that we're communicating very clearly to people about what our thinking is.
Well, I also want you to get some credit here, Dave, because something that's really struck me, and one of the things that I love about I would say the people and the culture of Webflow is really, as you said, this idea of trying to build a platform, and even just you coming on today, we were able to grab dinner when you came to Atlanta, 6 months ago. But that, I mean, all of those little things, they mean so much. They really do. And if there is this kind of, I would say, ubiquity in terms of the love that people really do have for not just like this platform, but really the community, I feel like it really comes from that spirit. And so I just wanted to thank you for really just kind of embodying that spirit. And it gives me a lot of confidence because, yeah, I mean, this has been a really tough year. to be in the web space. It's also really exciting. I mean, like, we sort of go back and forth in our business where it's like, we're very fortunate in that our business is up and growing and moving to the right. And at the same time, there's never been kind of more uncertainty, questions around like, okay, what are we investing in for 2 or 3 years? Because like a lot of our, partnership investments, platform investments, like that takes a lot of either like planning, training, coordinating. Like you have to have a full team there, as well as like what the position is and all those types of things. And so I feel like just the human side of the web shouldn't be understated. And so I just wanted to definitely throw that out there, and for anyone listening, to make sure that like there is a lot of things that are happening that are very genuine and great to see.
I really appreciate that. I started my career really in community,
Mm.
like activities. One of my first jobs was actually at eBay,
Oh,
and again late '90s. But the idea behind the job was to build trust between buyers and sellers on eBay, and eBay the
oh.
company, and sort of the community that actually drove it forward. And I learned a lot of lessons about you know the idea that we say community,
Mm.
and it might be, in that case, the eBay community, but it's really eBay as a brand going into communities of action to participate and give back to them, and to create that virtuous cycle and sort of ecosystem approach. And so I don't know, for 2 decades or more, that has shaped the way that I think about how brands and how I personally, as a leader and a practitioner, engage with the community. And I think that is, especially in an age like now, where nobody has the playbook. I
Mm.
mean, literally nobody has the playbook. You can scroll on LinkedIn, and if you see people who say I have the answer, they probably don't have the answer and they're lying. The people who are authentic and they're like, I tried this, this, and this. Here's what broke.
Yep.
Here's what didn't break, and this and that. Those are the people to lean into and trust, because they're being authentic to the fact that like there is no playbook right now. And what I've noticed, going back to the AEO conference that I saw you at, is everyone now agrees on the problem diagnosis. They
Mm.
don't necessarily know the right approach forward. And what's happening is companies are going company by company by company, trying to create their own playbook. And what I want to bridge to over here is, and I'm not just saying this because I'm on your podcast,
Sure.
but like agencies have superpowers in this
Mm.
age. They really do. And if anything, you have more superpowers than you ever did before, because every in-house team is trying to solve by just looking inside.
Mm.
And you can pattern match across dozens and dozens and
Yep.
dozens of customers and clients that you work with about what works and what doesn't work. And so that's one of the things that I'm just excited to partner with you on.
Oh yeah, 100%. And um, I want to dig into this idea around community, and then also around, we can talk a bit about, I think, the future of the agency space. I've never thought there's a better time to build an agency, and especially within the world of the web. And we're also seeing it from like, not just me, but like Y Combinator is now looking at vertically integrated product and solutions,
Yeah.
right? And I think the thing that's exciting for me is this idea of being able to build on top of Webflow. We've done that for a long time for these kind of like vertically integrated solutions and platforms. But I'd love to kind of rewind and go back to your eBay days.
Yeah.
So, I came up, a kid of the 90s. I started getting on the internet with free CDs from AOL, and
Yes.
some even like 5.5, or I guess it was like 3.5 inch floppies. What did you kind of learn about like how to work with community, or sort of the value of community as it relates to a brand that I didn't prep you for this, and so you might have
Yeah.
to spitball a little bit. What did you see then? And how can we kind of like take that into today?
I think one of the first things that I saw was the importance of passion,
Mm.
and it's really hard work, because when people are really passionate, they can either be passionate happy or passionate not very happy at you. The
Yeah.
worst thing that can happen especially as a marketer, is when people don't care.
Mm.
And so when people don't care, you're dealing with a whole different set of problems. But when you're dealing with a community, when you're interacting with a community of people who are super passionate about themselves and their businesses as they grow their businesses, and they're growing their business on your platform, so they are a stakeholder in your success and you're a stakeholder in their success, it can be a real both game changer for the business, but also as a human being who's a practitioner. It's some of the most rewarding work that you can do, because then it's not about, can I sell you a piece of software? It is about, can I improve your life in some way, shape, or form? And how can I help contribute and give back?
Mm.
So I think for me, like, lesson number one was passion as a gift.
Mm.
Lesson number two is, I'm going to go back to trust.
Sure.
Um, and it's like I said right at the beginning, I can't overstate the importance of trust building today, um, especially in a world in which trust in institutions is down,
Yeah.
trust in government is down, trust in people's future is down, or future prospects is down. There's a whole rising tide of technology, tectonic transformation that undermines trust and a sense of confidence. And so the brands that succeed, I believe, are the ones that treat trust like both a strategic advantage and a bank account, which
Mm.
is you deposit in it all the time and withdraw very wisely and very
Mhm.
infrequently. And so back in my eBay days, we thought a lot about this. We actually created what I called a trust barometer, which was like
Mm.
the consumer confidence index of trust on eBay. And I
Oh,
would look at it
wow.
every day, and I would look at the perception, what the conversation was about, where we needed to go deep,
Mm.
and all of that. And so that was very important.
Wow. Today, kind of fast forward, are there any tools that you're using to track trust? I don't know if it's, share a voice is another thing, or just like what are you looking at in your metrics?
I look at a variety of things, and I think
Okay.
one of the cool things about about being a marketer is that the 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 great marketers have basically a huge antenna on top of their head.
Hmm.
And so just envision me, that I've got like this huge antenna on top of my head,
Yep.
and I'm taking signals from a lot of different places. And some of those are based on tools, like we've Gong. I
Yeah.
listen to Gong calls all the time.
Huh.
And I'm not only listening to it to see what's going on with the sales team and what they're talking about, and if there's anything I can do to support them, but I'm actually seeing what sentiment is like when they talk to people. And then I can do a pull through on that. Um, we use a tool called Sprout Social. Sprout Social is helping us with
Right.
social media sentiment, and we have our own internal tools. As I said, we're customer zero, but we're also creating sort of this AI native marketing team.
Mm.
We're doing a bunch of internal work to look at public sites and basically scrape for sentiment. What are people talking about? Is it positive or negative or whatnot? So I take a look at all that and other tools that are in the mix. I'm sorry, I'm dorking out on this right now,
No,
but
this
let me
is
just
this is
go.
all super important.
Let me just go a little bit deeper, which is there's also the important, though somewhat antiquated, quarterly or biannual brand health survey
Hmm.
that we send out. And in that, we're engaging, are people aware of us, consideration,
Hmm.
salience, but also specific attributes of trust. And we're able to see the correlation between that and how our brand is like performing. So all of which is to say that there are a variety of things that I take a look at. I have not created the Webflow version of the trust barometer yet. And so I think I've been in job for a year and change. I think maybe on year two, I'll create our version of the trust barometer.
Uh, and you can vibe code it now, right? You can do
Apparently.
you can use code components in Webflow and hook that up, and
I love
yeah,
it. And then I have a platform that it will be alive and well from day two and beyond,
yeah.
so that I can keep on making sure that it is helping. So yeah.
Yeah. I'm curious I would love to just chip through these. First off, real quick on your Gong calls, is there anything that you're using to get to your greatest hits, or is it just like kind of jump on random, and like how are you queuing up your Gong podcast?
Such a great question because I've failed at this previously,
Okay.
where in my previous job and even in the first days over here, where I'll just jump in a Gong and start to listen to like random things. What ends up happening is you might get lucky and you might listen to a great call, but you spend a lot of time trying to get to that place.
Mm,
And so my best practice now is I have some very trusted people internally that I ask them, please share with me 2 to 3 calls per week
mm,
that you think I should focus on this one. And then we have an AI generated, sort of data pull
mm,
where it can cut across all of our Gong calls and then pull out things like message pull through,
mm.
common objections, when competitors are raised and how they are, and all of that. So we're able to look at that data as well.
Cool. And then I've been hearing more about Sprout Social.
Yeah.
Uh, I know very little about them. Like, talk with me about just how you're using that platform, and how is this different than something else?
So to be honest, I'm not the expert in Sprout Social. My
Sure.
team is, but they rave about it.
Mm,
There are a set of public channels out there, like Reddit, as an example,
mm,
where we can use our our internal homegrown tools to
mm.
basically scrape the information from
Yep.
and get a lot of insight. Sprout Social is a platform that enables you to go even deeper and correlate data in ways that we can't do internally. So we like to look at the combination of those two in order to figure out where is the signal and where is the signal not.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, getting back to the ability as an agency to look across a wide variety of customers. Um, that's something that's been interesting, is seeing the different ways in which people are using tools. And then what are some of the commonalities within industries, or, either listening techniques and things like that. And what I'm hearing more and more of is how, you know, people are using AI for listening at scale, but I think being more cautious around creating just a bunch of AI stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, like, is that how much is human created inside of Webflow, and then how much is like just auto generated, or what do you see as that mix? Maybe just we'll talk broadly
Yeah.
for a company.
I think that I think we're in a really interesting now we Webflow, I'll say the category first and then I'll come
Yep.
back to Webflow. I think we're seeing a bunch of pendulum swings.
Mm,
And one pendulum swing, which is concluding now, was let anybody use any AI tool to create any content and just throw it out there and let it optimize itself.
yeah.
I think brands have woken up to the fact that what ends up happening is your content looks like everybody else's because
Mm,
it's all trained on the same data.
yep.
And it actually has a much more like insidious part to it, which is not only does your content look like everyone else's, but the marketers who have been working on it stop thinking,
Mm,
and they stop being, expert at their craft because they feel like they can have the easy button to just create a bunch of content. And so I see the pendulum coming back. I don't think it's coming all the way back because I think that AI has a huge role to play in content creation and in strategy. And I'll explain what I mean in a second.
mm,
But there are very specific points in time that I want to make sure that the human marketer on the team versus the agentic marketer
uh-huh,
on the team is leaning in as much as possible.
mm,
And it's not just human in the loop after the fact of QA.
yeah.
It's actually upstream from that, which
Mm,
is, I think, one of the most powerful things that you can do as a marketer is the brief. And the reason why, and it sounds mundane, but the brief is the place, it's the doc that is the place where you show your insight. It's
mm,
not just data, but it
mhm,
shows that you understand your customer deep enough that you have an insight about what is happening with the audience that you're trying to get in front of. And that you're doing something that really only humans can do, which is you have trusted connections within the company to build alignment.
mm,
And so one of the things that the team and I are really leaning into is when we look at time spent, I want a lot of time spent upfront on the brief to make sure the brief is the best, most strategic thing.
mm,
And then at least one bespoke piece of content that feels human.
Hmm.
And then from there are a bunch of mundane activities that can happen afterwards: resizing of ads,
Yeah.
cutting up, an ebook so that it has 5 different social pieces. Those I think are automatable. I don't see a lot of added value in it, but it's really getting that mix right and that
Hmm.
sequence right that I think is super important.
You talked about the brief and getting to an insight. I remember really early in my career when I was making the shift from, because I grew up doing Flash development,
Mm.
and then I went to Razorfish, and then I would volunteer to work on anyone's PowerPoint that they would let me work on it. And I did that to learn the business side. Coming up with an insight, I think it's one of these things that for me initially felt kind of out of reach. I don't know how to describe it. It was difficult. What do you see as the characteristics of a good insight that
Yeah.
lead to a good brief?
Uh,
And think
p-
about this as just like a teaching moment for those in the community that are like
yeah.
kind of making their way from being like a web builder to like a growth engine builder.
Yeah. What a fantastic question. I think that there are 2, maybe 3 things.
Okay.
Um, the first is listening.
Hmm.
Um, One of my mentors once told me that you have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason, and the reason why is to listen twice as much as you talk.
Exactly.
I violate that principle too often, but the reality is, like, I think in order to create a good brief, you need to, like I said earlier, have an antenna on top of your head, and be able to take in a lot of information.
Mhm.
Um, I think the second thing is then, well, actually, the first thing is part of this, which is part of listening is curiosity. And
Mm.
you can't fake it. You actually
Yep.
have to be curious. You can't fake curiosity. You've got to be genuinely interested in. I'm curious about this thing, and go through what I guess Simon Sinek would say. What are the 5 whys? You know, why is this happening? Okay, why is that happening? Okay, why is that happening? And only after a certain amount do you get into something that is truly insightful when you do that. Um, and then I think the third thing is, like I said earlier, is this innately human trait that I hope your entire audience holds on to, and that anyone in the community and any agency has, which is the ability to take that insight and align with other people.
Hmm.
Have conviction in what you believe in, but also understand that when you align with other people, you're getting a gift of different people's perspectives on this thing that you're creating. And so the brief enables you with an actual document, maybe a virtual document, to go to different experts, to different people with different vantage points, and start to figure out where the alignment is and where the actual truth really is. And I think those 3 are super important. And back to the importance of a brief, I was talking to one of my fellow panelists who will be at Conf, and she was saying something that really landed with me, which was one of the reasons why it's so important for humans to focus on the brief is that it's really one of your only competitive advantages from a
Mm.
marketing perspective is the insight that you're able to take out.
Yep.
If you abdicate insight to an AI, then that's the same insight that your competitors have.
Mhm.
And so they're going to arrive at the same place. So if you want marketing that actually breaks through the noise and breaks through what I call the sea of same, that's the brief, the insight, all of that is the place to lean in.
That's, I think, such a good description, and it goes right back to what you were just talking about around using these other tools like Gong and Sprout and brand health surveys as a listening mechanism, and then from there having this conviction, and then aligning internally, and then I guess aligning internally, or is just that's maybe working with your other colleagues to make sure that that the perspective of what you're bringing is inclusive of the broader business. Is that maybe a good way of categorizing that?
Yeah, though I'd add to it, and I have because it's not just internally.
Yeah,
I have a kitchen cabinet of people, and you're one of them,
sure.
Mason. In fact, I might tell a little story over here. People who I trust, who look at the world in a slightly different way than I do, who I'll reach out to and I'll say, "Hey, I have this insight about this thing. Um, is this right? Do you agree with this? Is there a shade that you like turn a degree to make it more right? And I think the importance of being able to kind of have the statecraft, the ability to listen and the ability to align internally, but also externally to the people who have equal stake in your company's success is really, really important.
Well, I'd love to talk a bit about, because you mentioned one of your panelists at WebflowConf, and
Yeah.
so we've got maybe another few minutes here. Let's dig into Conf, man. I'm so excited. I can't wait.
Okay.
Boston. It's been a while since I've been there,
Yeah.
so give me just like, what are maybe a couple things that you're excited about that people can look forward to?
Well, I think this is just an extraordinary a point in time
Mm,
for everybody who's involved in the web, in marketing on the web, and building on the web. And one of the things that I've learned recently is the importance of gatherings, the
mm,
importance of bringing people together to share notes about what works and what doesn't work. That's what WebflowConf is going to be. It's going to be
yeah.
1,500 people in Boston who part of the Webflow community, but also adjacent to it,
Yep.
who are thinking about what does like marketing on the web actually look like. And so I've looked at the agenda more times than I want to publicly admit. But every time I look at it, I'm like, I can't believe that I get to be a part of this conference that has an agenda like this. We've got,
Yeah.
okay, you ready? We've
Yeah.
got
Let's run through it.
We've got Ethan Mollick, who is the author of Co-Intelligence.
Hmm,
I'm such an Ethan Mollick fanboy. He's also a professor at Wharton.
hmm.
Ethan wrote a book called Co-Intelligence maybe 3 years ago. The discussions we're having about AI now is based on his book 3 years ago. And
Wow.
he's got a book coming out in the fall. So what he's going to talk about at WebflowConf is what we are going to be talking about for the next 3 years. You want to be in the room when that conversation is happening. So number one, I have
Wow.
goosebumps just thinking about it. Thing number two, Seth Meyers is going to be there.
It's
Late
unreal.
night TV, Seth Meyers. And you might think, well, that's a little bit random. What does Seth Meyers have to do with Webflow? I can't think of somebody who's been on the front edge of so many platform shifts
Hmm,
from SNL to his own late night to podcasts and so on than Seth Meyers.
hmm.
And his perspective of the world around him. I watch a closer look almost 3 times a week, 2 3 times a week. It's how I interpret the world around me. So Seth Meyers will be there. We'll be having a conversation with him. And then I think the third thing, and I could go on and on and on about the
Yeah.
agenda, but like, and I think this is really important to your audience, which
Hmm,
is those two blog posts that we talked about earlier were just a hint, just a
hmm.
taste of what we're actually going to be unveiling at WebflowConf, and and it's just critical that everyone is there to hear it live and then to talk with others in the community about what we are about to unveil for the next set of years in front of us.
Wow. Well, yeah, I've been going through the lineup, and it's, I would say, one of the best I've ever seen. And I think I've been to all. The only one that I didn't go to in person was the one during COVID where it wasn't in person. So congratulations for getting all this together. I can only imagine like the work that goes into this as well, right? It's almost like, I would imagine, it's like having a wedding, right? It's some type of massive, 1,500 people. This is
In some
quite,
ways, I'll speak quieter because I don't
yeah,
want my wife to hear this. She's in the other room. In some ways, it might be better than a wedding for this reason, in that no one person can put on an event like that alone.
yeah, yeah,
It is a team sport.
yeah,
And I am humbled and fortunate to work with, I think, the best marketing team on the planet
yeah.
who's putting this event on. And what makes them so good is not just the passion, but their work with the community to make sure that the agenda and the content is exactly what people are looking for and kind of need to see. So all of that is what makes it great. And then I'm gonna give you one last thing, and it's the cherry on top, which is I'm from Boston.
I
Um,
didn't know that.
I'm from Boston. I live in San Francisco now, but I'm a Bostonian, and so I've got Red Sox
Oh
streaming
man.
through my bloodstream.
Wow.
And so to be able to go home for WebflowConf 2026 is a big deal for me.
Are you inviting family?
I'm inviting them. I think they might have other things to do that night,
Okay.
but I'm inviting them.
I know that like, my mom would want to be there and, all that sort of stuff. So that's really cool. 1,500 people. Who are these 50? I mean, like that's, and you mentioned kind of like sort of an expansion of, because maybe back up. At the core, there's been the Webflow builder community. I have seen an expansion into what I would say the business community, which I find really exciting because it's about, you know, having more people in there that are doing really great stuff and that, as you said, like have different perspectives and kind of viewpoints. What's the makeup like of, is like like geography or just like kind of Webflow customers or non-customers? Like who could,
Yeah.
obviously we've got some people that we've known and love that will be there.
Yeah.
But who are the people that
Yeah.
we don't know?
The makeup is a very diverse makeup, and I think it speaks to where the community is right now.
Yeah.
And maybe this is worth emphasizing because community can mean different things to different people. My sense of our community is it's inclusive of, the freelancer, the agency,
Mhm.
maybe the one person shop, but all the way up to the enterprise itself.
Yeah.
They're now part of the community, and so it's really a big tent at this point. And so, we'll have marketers and designers and developers, increasingly the people with more technical edge to them,
Mhm.
because that's what the state of building on the web looks like these days. And this great mixture of agencies of all sizes and in-house teams. And so, it's quite amazing when a brand has been around for this long and the tent gets bigger and bigger and
Yep.
bigger and bigger. The amount of vibrancy that can happen in a conference like this is huge.
Well, and I think the thing that's exciting for me is just seeing the evolution, right? From the no code conf back in, what is it, 2019 to today. And back then it was interesting because it was like great. It was like a really small group, but it was kind of like all my Twitter buddies just coming together and high-fiving. And last year I started to see the difference of really moving into, I mean, there was a lot of customers that we either were working with or were in conversations with, or just people that were in um, companies that were looking for help. And I think that's one of the things that's exciting is that it's not just about kind of like this high-fiving with buddies, but really a business conference for everyone figuring out like what to build next, what do they need to do to grow. So that's where I think
I,
this evolution has started to move into.
I love that. And, we can be the proof that a business conference doesn't mean it's a boring conference.
Yeah,
The
absolutely not.
vibrancy the vibrancy that we're going to be bringing to Boston, I don't know if Boston's ever seen, and that's coming from a Bostonian. I can tell you it's going to be really exciting. One of the things that we learned in Webflow Confs in the past is there are a lot of people who wanted to go to network and build business and this and that, but we held it in venues where, in order to do that, they'd have to leave the venue and
Yeah,
go somewhere else. Well, what we're doing this year is we've taken over an entire hotel in one of the coolest parts of Boston, which is both where people will be at the conference and also where they're staying.
yeah.
So it will be an immersive experience for everybody who goes.
Well, and that's also something that's never happened. And generally, it'll be like conf is over here, and then there's like everyone spread into a bunch of different places. So to have this, as you said, bigger tent, I feel like the tent's kind of gone like this and it's popped out. It's kind of got the wings on it. Um, and then to just not be like, oh, where are you staying? Or, trying to chase people around a random town that you've never been to before. And trying to catch up with everyone on WhatsApp or, whatever text thread to be like, oh, we're going here, going here. So I think I didn't realize that it's all in like that one building. So that's going
It's
to be
all
a
at the
really,
Omni. It's all at the
wow.
Omni. It's a beautiful part of town as well. And
Hmm.
so, as somebody who grew up in Boston, I can tell you, in the beginning of September is a special time to be in Boston. I'm not entirely sure how the Red Sox are doing this year, if it's special from a baseball perspective, but the spirit is definitely in the air in the beginning of September.
Amazing. Well, just want to thank you for kind of coming on today as we're wrapping up. Any kind of final thoughts or things to, leave people on as, we're heading into conf?
Yeah, look, I would first of all, thanks for having me. I knew that this was going to be a great conversation because every time you and I talk, it is if we're doing the podcast.
Yeah,
And
I
we'd
know.
be
I've,
like,
I've
okay,
thought many times we need to record
like
this.
save it
So
for the podcast, save it for the podcast. So I'm glad that we finally made it happen. We just like hit record. And to anyone who tuned in, this is my one-on-one with Mason. This is like what we talk about all the time. The thing that I'd leave people with is that, the community and Webflow are going through an extraordinary amount of change right now. We believe that one of the biggest jobs to be done right now isn't can you get a website live? It's what you do on day 2 and beyond.
yep.
And as teams are becoming AI native marketing teams, just like my own is, um, we are not only committed, but it is our mission to make sure that we're helping these teams who are shaping what's next. And so that's what we'll talk about at Conf. But guess what? We'll be talking about it in the weeks and months and years after Conf as well.
Amazing. Well, Dave, first off, it's my honor to be able to get to hang out with you, and just really thrilled that you include me in a lot of these conversations. And the thing that I'd love to do is kind of maybe after conf, after, things settle a little bit, get kind of your take on like, all right, all of this stuff has been launched and live, and how people can start to work with it and to do what's going to be next.
I love
So,
it. You bet, Mason. You bet.
yeah.
And I'll see you in a
Well,
couple of weeks.
I'll see you in a few weeks. Hang out for just a second while we finish uploading,
Yeah.
and I will see you in Boston. So, okay. Thanks, everyone.